This week on In Post, a straight up processing job of a beautiful seascape in La Jolla, California. Hi everyone, my name is Scott Davenport. Welcome back to In Post. And today we're going to process an image I took at La Jolla very recently. You may have seen the In the Field episode showing some of the behind the scenes of the shoot. And yeah, this was this is going to be a straight up processing job. There's no real, no fancy tricks, no elaborate layers or things like that. So basic adjustments and a little bit of stylization, and come away with something really, really nice. So let's just get over to the computer and dive right in.
All right, so here's the image in Lightroom, and the only thing I've done so far is the profile corrections for the camera and a little spot removal. So here's the before. You can see some spots here, dust spots up in the sky, and here's the after with a little bit of that perspective correction from the lenses. Very first thing I got to deal with is white balance. As I mentioned in the field video, I had accidentally had my camera set to daylight, and so this came out incredibly blue. So this was how it was shot, and then fiddling around with custom, this is where I ended up. Brought the temperature way up. These whitewash here in the ocean, that should be mostly white. It's the name whitewash, I suppose. And I corrected a little bit of the tint to bring up a little more of the orange tones here. Now to go for the rest of this. This still feels a little bit underexposed. I want to get this right edge of the histogram all the way up to the bump to the edge there. So I'm going to bring this, that's probably too much. Let me try right about there. Press J, check for clipping, and there's just a tiny amount where the sun is. That's perfect. I'm going to do the same thing now for, or whites and black points now. Actually, that's what we're going to do next. So I like to hold down the Option key, and I expect to have some clipping in the sky because that's what's going to happen at the sunshine. And I'm just going to keep poking here until all right, I've seen stuff in the clouds up at the top there. Let me back that off a little bit. That looks good. We'll do the same thing for the blacks. Option key, and I'm going to drag that over to the left. I'm starting to see a little bit of the blacks right down in this rock here. Show that to you again, right there. And so we'll inch that back off just so there's just a tiny little bit of black there. A little more contrast, just inching it up, and I'm just watching the image as I play with the slider here, and somewhere around the 22-ish range looks pretty good. And also got clarity. Actually, I guess I already bumped that up. I guess I must have done that earlier before I started recording. Well, I did add some clarity. Let's see what it looked like before without that. It's just a touch. You can see, mostly you see that in these darker areas here. You get a little more crispness, and the clouds up here are still a little bit soft. I am going to amp that up a bit in the Perfect Photo Suite, which is where we're going to go right now. So I will go to File, Plug-in Extras, Perfect Photo Suite 9, and I'll join you on the other side. The first thing I'm going to do is clean up the beach here in Perfect Layers. So this is the layer that I brought in from Lightroom. I've already done some work on here, but to show you the basics of what's going on is I'll just zoom over to this area here. I'll grab the Perfect Eraser from the tool well, set a brush size, and just start working my way through these little tiny bits of seaweed, because I find these to be distracting overall for the image and not really adding to it. And just working my way through all of these areas. That one looks like it needs a second touch-up, and so on and so forth, until I got to this. So you can see, zoomed in here, the before and after. Just working my way through that area with the Perfect Eraser. I then switch this layer to a smart layer because I'm going to send it into effects, and I want to be able to re-edit my effects. And let me show you the few subtle effects that were added to this by launching into Perfect Effects. In Effects, the first thing I want to do is add some contrast to the scene overall. So I have a dynamic contrast filter and just very subtle touch, less than 10 on the small, medium, and large sliders, just to give a little bit of definition to the clouds and a little bit to the water here in the foreground and the rocks. I don't want to bump this up too high because I want to keep this water soft. I do want some more contrast and punch in the clouds, so I added a second dynamic contrast filter, but I've masked it so that only I'm applying the contrast
to the cloud. So just dropped a masking bug, masking bug on the well, and dropped it right here at the horizon. And also the strength of the contrast, I'm just using a standard natural setting, 0 for the smalls, 15 and 20 for the large, medium and large. I backed off the opacity of the layer overall. Here it is at 100%, and that was just a little bit too much for me. So I backed that strength of that filter off to suit my taste. Next is a photo filter. Now when I activate this, watch what happens to the beach. You can see the beach warm up. So I'm using a warming filter. These are all standard settings. But the trick is I used a luminosity mask so that I would only apply this to selected areas of the photo, and I didn't have to do all the masking and the fiddling with my brushes here. So just from the mask menu, I chose Create Luminosity Mask. It created this mask for me. And I believe I inverted this because these sandy areas are kind of the darker tones in the image. The sky up here is brighter. This is obviously bright. So I inverted it so I could have this applied to just the sandy area. Next is a sunshine filter, and this one's just a nice little touch of brightness right where the sun's going down. Ultimately, this is where I want your eye to go. It is already kind of the brightest area, but I felt like having a little more touch to this, and I'm using another masking bug with the edges shape. So this is masking it away from the edges, right? So the only thing I'm getting is the effect inside this inner circle. Everything else outside, if I can do Control M, you can see everything else outside is masked away. And last but not least is a tone enhancer, and this was really just to correct a little more of the color cast. The coloring still felt a little bit off, and when I loaded in the tone enhancer, it just did a nice job of kind of cleaning the image up a little bit, and I added just a touch more detail with that last slider. And this is where I corrected the color cast, just pulling the blues down just a little bit. So that is all the stylization. So here is what came out of Lightroom, and here's the final product. That is it. So yeah, really just the basic stuff. I think the biggest challenge I had with this one was just getting the white balance set right. I had inappropriately set the white balance in camera. Not that that matters for a raw image, but it starts off wildly different because the preview is based on that embedded JPEG that it bakes in whatever the white balance setting you had in the camera. So that was a little unusual, but nothing that couldn't be overcome. And everything else from there, I think pretty straightforward stuff. So I hope that this was enjoyable for you, and maybe a reminder that we don't always need 87 filters and all sorts of elaborate layers and masks and so on and so forth. Sometimes just those core basic types of adjustments that we need to do is all you need to get a photo to really sing. So until next time, have a good time shooting. Share your work. Like to see some of your stuff. You can hit me up on social media. I'm pretty active on Twitter, a fair amount on Google+, but have a little trouble with Google lately. They've been slow, and the system hasn't been responsive. So if you've been sending me things on G+, and I haven't plus one it back or responded, that's probably why. So, but Twitter's a great alternative, and I'm usually on there daily. So have a great time shooting this week, and I'll see you again soon.